He abused his own daughters, his own flesh and blood. If that isn't a strong indication of just how goddamn fucking shit Grizzly Smith was, then I don't know what is. I'm John Renton with my review of Dark Side of the Ring in the Shadow of Grizzly Smith, and I'm not going to be kind with this one. There's no way to be kind with this one. There's no way to be anything except a mixture of angry, sad, raging, and how the fuck could a father do that to his own flesh and fucking blood and other underage girls? How fucking sick do you have to be to prey on people that don't even know what they're doing because they're still growing up? How dare you? How fucking dare you, Grizzly Smith, you goddamn piece of shit. And he died from complications from Alzheimer's, and I hope that he suffered and his brain rotted bit by bit. He suffered every single waking minute for everything that he did. I hope that he rotted from the inside out, because that's what everybody that's a pedophile, everybody that takes advantage of anyone like that, that's what they fucking deserve to have happen to them. This episode, you want to talk about dark side, this was one of the darkest episodes, and some of this stuff was told on the Jake the Snake Roberts Pick Your Poison DVD. I believe that's what the name of it was. Came out like in 2005, just around the time that he made a return to WWE TV when he was still battling through his addictions. And it was like a 20-minute opening about all this shit that had happened, and it dives more in depth. We get to hear from Rockin' Robin, aka Robin Smith, his sister. We get to hear from Sam Houston, and boy, that's a real cautionary tale of somebody who's a really good worker, but just is her own worst enemy. But I knew enough about Grizzly Smith to know that he had a lot of issues, and, at least to say the least. But the amount of abuse that he inflicted just psychologically on his own family would have been enough to basically curse his existence. He abused his daughters. There is no way to fucking excuse that. No way to excuse that goddamn shit. That is fucking unforgivable. An ungodly, monstrous thing to do. And it opens with the following episode features, a discussion about incest and sexual abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. And I do want to say I'm going to put the number at the end of this episode. There's a number and the website link for Rainn. I'm going to put that in the description of my video. So if any of you, and I'm not asking you to share anything in the comments, but if any of you are have dealt with, or are dealing with something like this, those are going to be in the description. I want you guys to reach out. Please reach out. I can only imagine the stuff you've gone through. And Grizzly Smith is a fucking piece of shit that I hope is burning in hell. And I, again, hope that the Alzheimer's rotted his brain. He knew just what a fucking monster he was. But apparently, even at the end of the day, he didn't think he did anything wrong. And that's the true sign of somebody that was a two-faced, monstrous motherfucker that never deserved a goddamn dime for professional wrestling or anything in life. So anyway, Jake the Snake Roberts is one of the most authentic personalities in the wrestling world, because basically that's what he was. He was one of the most authentic and crazy wrestling personalities, because it was him. Like, it was a bunch of pain, anguish, anger, all that. It was just wrapped up. Sam Houston and Rockin' Robin are his brother and sister. The control that Grizzly Smith had over his kids, he could, pit them all against each other, because, he was master of everything. He was a puppeteer. The Smith children had substance abuse issues, and that gets talked about during this, and there's really no way to talk about all this stuff. If they had tried to do a two-parter on this, I probably would have had to have just said, I'm just going to have to review this in two parts. There's no way I can do it all in one. Okay, just give me a second. I had to pause this sometimes while writing down notes, but also to walk away, because I was getting so angry. If you want to feel pain, you have to go from the top and get knocked down to the bottom. Jake the Snake Roberts does that. Jake the Snake Roberts admits he is no saint. And no, it is obvious he's not. And once you find out how he was raised, it's amazing that he's even still alive. None of us want to talk about what happened. It's so painful, just too damn much. And it would be. It would be. And we probably only got maybe 20% of what he fucking did. Grizzly Smith, that is. So anyway, since formulation of the territories, pro wrestling's been a family business, because family members can be relied on to protect the secrets and everything, like the Harts, Von Erich, so many others. and Jim Cornette provided a lot of great insight here. He was in Mid-South when Grizzly Smith was a road agent, or like the road agent or something like that, whatever the title was, and he would travel from town to town, stuff like that, and Cornette would talk to him and he would hear about stories in the locker room. But anyway, first, Michael Smith, aka, Sam Houston, he was a revered worker, and seeing some of Sam Houston's work in Jim Crockett Promotions and even in WWE when he wasn't really utilized all that well, but you got to find out why later. Sam Houston was a hell of a worker. I don't think he would have been anything more than what he was, even if he hadn't had substance abuse issues. He was a better Kendall Windham in this sense. He had the potential, and he had good work, but that was really about it. He was appreciated by so many people because he was safe to work with, and he could make you look good. And he was a hell of a babyface. He says that Robin is one of the best women's champions, and she's my sister, and it's an honor for me to say that. You can tell there's camaraderie among the family, despite the fact they were pitted against each other, and there was so much fracturing, emotionally, physically, mentally, among the family. You can feel the pain on everybody's face during this. Robin talks about her wrestling, or how wrestling came to be. Richard, the other brother, the oldest one, the one that didn't get into wrestling, he didn't want to travel, so he didn't get into wrestling. Jake wanted the spotlight on him. That business is a rat race, and it just wasn't for me. He was open and honest, and I can appreciate that. Jake, as a wrestler, has strengths and weaknesses. He was never a high-level, amateur wrestler. He never had a great, physique, but he had the psychology and he had the mental aspect, and because he used all the pain from his life to go into that. And the promos. Jake Snake Roberts was a tremendous promo. Tremendous fucking promo. Even at his lowest, he could still command you with his attention. But, he had that ability to make you believe that he really was a snake in the grass, and maybe there was some truth to that. There kind of was, because Jake Snake Roberts burned a lot of bridges. We see family photos. We see family photos a few times during this. Grizzly didn't want Jake in wrestling. He says, "You're gutless. You'll never amount to anything." He tried to get him fired from a few places because he didn't want to be part of it. Probably didn't want Jake to find out about the stuff that he had done outside of, the family home, even though it's pretty obvious that just doesn't stop at home. Sometimes, maybe you wouldn't want that stuff getting out. Oh, you know how that stuff doesn't get out? You don't fucking abuse your family. That's how you fucking do it. And he got into wrestling because he was angry at his father, and he channeled that anger. He made a lot of money. He also wasted a lot of money because he did a lot of drugs, and he's open about that. Grizzly got involved in wrestling because, he worked in the oil field. Somebody saw him and says, "Hey, this guy's 7 feet, 350 some odd pounds. Let's have him stand up against an alley wall and take punches in the stomach for 50 cents. And he doesn't double over, and he makes more money than he did working in the oil field, so he decided to get into wrestling." And he was a good territorial worker. 7 feet, 350 pounds. How could you not do something with somebody like that back in wrestling? When he got started all the way into the 70s, even with his shot knees, "Oh, you poor abusive, family abuser. Oh, God, your knees were shot. I feel so fucking bad for you. Fuck Grizzly Smith. I'm glad he's dead. Hope he suffered mightily for what he did." He was a huge guy, and, the kids saw him live and saw the the blood and everything, and the doctor even said, "There's only so much I can do for your head because the skin's all messed up." We see footage of Grizzly Smith. I don't know where the hell they got this. I don't know where it was from. He did psychological torture on his kids, talking about making his kids believe this is all real and stuff like that. Which, yes, you don't want to let your kids in on it being a work, but the way he did it was so goddamn ridiculous. Retires in the late 70s, gets a behind-the-scenes position, and Cornette talks about when he got to Mid-South Wrestling. He may have mentioned Mid-South Wrestling. Some of this stuff kind of just skated by because I was just so angry. And he said he would hear stuff like, I wonder if Grizz is mentoring a young girl again, or having a young girl sit on his lap while he reads Bible verses. And he's like, well, that's a little bit strange. And then you find out years later, that's why they were saying it. Now, they wouldn't say, well, Grizzly was there, even though at 7 feet, 350, but with shot knees, they probably could have fucking taken him and beat the shit out of him. Not that Grizz was the only person that did that, but I guarantee you that he was one of the worst offenders. He's just as bad as Buck Zumhoff. Hell, he did more shit than Buck Zumhoff did, and that's saying something. And Buck Zumhoff's rotting in jail as he should rock and roller. Yeah, somebody taking that goddamn boombox and smash it over his head. Baby Doll, who, yeah, Baby Doll's not exactly one of my favorite people. If you know, you know. But you know, you always wanted to pick his brain. Talking about Grizzly on road trips, how could I get better? She met Sam Houston in '85. They got married. On one road trip one time, she was with Grizzly. Said picked up a 14 or 15-year-old girl for a 3 or 4 day trip, and parents said, "Bye, see you Tuesday." And she thought, well, that's really weird or whatever. But I was right there, and you know, nothing ever happened that I saw. And I do believe that. I don't think Grizzly was stupid enough to do that. Well, no, Grizzly is stupid, but I don't believe that Grizzly would want to share the spotlight. He'd want to, you know, make sure the psychological torture, the spotlight went on him. Because that's the kind of narcissist and piece of shit he was. So, Jake and Aurelian Smith Jr. are two different people. Aurelian Smith Jr., you know, Jake Snake Roberts' his actual name, has been buried pretty much since he was 13 because of all the abuse and all the shit that he saw. Jake's okay as long as you keep him handcuffed. You know, mother was 13 years old when he was born. He talked about that in the Pick Your Poison thing, and that the father was a pedophile. You know, they split, I believe, when the mother was 17. Oh, you're turning 18, honey. I can't be with you. I got to get with somebody younger. I wouldn't be surprised if Grizzly Smith, you know, again, the guy who I hope his brain fucking rotted away. I hope he suffered and the pain just ate at him and ate at him. Every bit. It would be only a fraction of the pain that he caused those kids and caused you know, caused his own family members and caused those little girls. It'd be only a fraction of the pain he caused, but it would be some form of karma. Anyway, the kids got spread around. Jolene in particular spent too much time with Grizz, if you know what I mean. The mother was loving. Jake does talk about that. He talks briefly about his grandparents. He did talk about that in the Pick Your Poison thing. If you can find either a copy of that on DVD or if you can find it on YouTube, it's really good to hear that because he does talk glowingly about his grandparents. That his grandfather took care of him, his grandmother took care of him, but at 11 years old, he had to go live with his dad again. And his dad's new wife liked to play games, sexual games, you know, with kids that didn't know what the fuck they were doing because the wife was just as bad. Beat the dad with a coat hanger and a fly swatter, and Grizz did the same thing to his daughters because he was a fucking piece of shit. Robin Smith, you know, to others he was a hero. To me, he was my monster. It started at 8 or 9. You know, he started making, you know, grooming, so to speak, about a month before, ignoring me. You know, Daddy loves you, and that's when he put his hands on me. And this is when I had to pause it. This is when I actually had to pause it. Right after that, I paused it. And she says, you know, it strips you your security, your self-respect, everything that makes you a child. I can only imagine what that would do to somebody. You know, the mother found out and took everybody out of the house, but you know, the mother died young, I believe. Some of the story gets a little bit muddled because it's hard to remember how many, you know, wives and everything were involved. Robin said that she basically told her dad she would shoot him with his own gun if he did that again. I think it was about till 14 that happened. The abuse, that is. Jolene took Robin out shopping and wanted to know, hey, have these things happened to you? Well, then she was suddenly kidnapped 2 weeks later. Grizzly, you know, left a note saying that she was kidnapped. Well, how would he know that? How would he know? Obviously, he had something to do with it. Richard put his hand through a wall, or his fist through a wall, because that was his sister, and who would hurt her? She was finally happy she had a kid, and she was all this and everything, even though she was young, she had a kid. Carl Buzz Gage, you know, the one good Gage has been featured on this episode, on this season of Dark Side of the Ring, as opposed to the other one. Talked to informed police chief in Tatum, Texas, and man, that mustache, sweet Jesus, that mustache. He said that, well, according to, you know, what we've analyzed, you know, all that stuff and everything, people took her away. Richard even said, you know, it would take more than one person to take her away because she was tough. They would wrestle, she would beat him, you know, in matches and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't think actually beat him, but she was legit tough. Lairs implement the ex-wife of Jolene's husband, but she escaped, said the ex-wife. Well, they never found the body. They even brought in a psychic. I mean, good Lord. Aggravated kidnapping. She, you know, instead of being charged with murder, 33 years, she served 7. Bullshit system. Robin thought that Grizz did it. didn't that he didn't want unsolved mysteries being brought in. Well, they solved mysteries. Well, there's some indication that maybe Grizzly knew because he's a piece of shit. It's rotten in hell. Jake took the hate from his childhood and put it into wrestling. And Robin trained with Nelson Royal that I've seen on a few of these older shows that I've watched recently. And Nelson Royal, even at near the end of his career, you could tell was a hell of a worker, hell of a territorial worker. Tried with WWE, I believe wrestled Sherry. Vince hires her in the late 80s. She doesn't stay around long, a few years. And Sherry, maybe even just a couple years, but yeah, beat Sherry for the Women's Championship in Paris, France, I believe. You're a hell of a hand. You're a good worker. That means that, you're somebody that can be relied on. Sam Houston's career, it took off and it also didn't. It didn't reach the heights it could have because of how good he was, but he had drinking problems. Baby Doll couldn't fix it. Their marriage, everything, it just fell apart because he would be just, with so many copious amounts of alcohol, so much alcohol that he couldn't function. And obviously that goes back. Obviously, a lot of these these substance abuse things go back to what the families experienced. Family members experienced, separating everything and all that stuff they witnessed, stuff from being from broken homes, being passed around from home to home. Could only imagine. Robin gets a visit from her dad with a 9-year-old girl and says, "Can you make her a daiquiri?" Once again, I would like to say that I hope that Grizzly Smith, passed away in the most immense amount of pain, and it ate at him. And hopefully, he's in the worst circle of hell, being destroyed repeatedly for all eternity. Robin basically talked to her all night and says, "Well, you can go, Dad." She can't. She's staying with me. He wouldn't even give that up because lepers don't change their spots and monsters never change. And addiction gets talked about. Sam Houston had the all-time record for Texas DUIs. I find that hard to believe because I'm sure that somebody does, and it's just not reported. But Grizzly kept getting him off of stuff and everything, but eventually he couldn't. Cornette even says if they caught you doing something 20 times, how many times have you really done it? That's true. And then, Sam went to jail for a while. He tried to hang himself. The knots broke, so there was a sign that it wasn't his time. That's never the answer. I'm just saying that's what he felt. He even recounted that. Jake did a bunch of drug problems, or had a bunch of drug problems. Keith Richards of professional wrestling. The cocaine was his life for 20 years. The Heroes of Wrestling show. He was on Planet Neptune. I think even that's closer than he probably, really was. It was more like, somewhere in another solar system. Heroes of Wrestling, really sad show. He said, "I'm a junkie, a liar, a thief." At least he's finally open about it. Robin, drinking was never a problem. I did it really well. Grizz died in 2010, Alzheimer's. Richard was understandably upset because his dad was put in his care, and I'm not going to fault him for that. He saw him as his dad, even with all the shit that he did. Memories don't go away that easily. Grizz never thought he did anything wrong, and then estrangement lingers among the family. Tell somebody, basically if you're abused, tell somebody. That's all I gotta say, guys. I'm gonna put the Rainn stuff in the description, but I'm sorry, I don't really have a lot to. I don't have a lighthearted way or anything, really like fun thing to say about this because this Grizzly Smith deserves a rotten fucking hell. He deserved to die horribly well before he did. I have no love for anything that Grizzly Smith ever did in wrestling. Fucking monster, fucking piece of shit. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Redland. I'll see you soon.